when I started the Wedding People, I did not know I was starting the Wedding People. It was something I started writing in the middle of trying to work on my second novel, Notes on Your Sudden Disappearance. And as we just discussed, that book can be a little heavy at times, but just based on the subject material. So I took a lot of breaks from it. And one of those breaks was just me thinking, I don't want to write about death anymore. I'm so tired of this grief business. Like I just want to write a fun story about a woman going to a fun place. And I don't, I was just sort of like living out of fantasy in my head. She skips work that day and gets on a plane and goes to the most expensive hotel I could imagine. And, but I was really just figuring my way through it as I wrote. And um, I love wedding stories. I love weddings. I used to work at weddings. We can certainly talk about that at some point. But so I knew, I just kind of knew there was a wedding going on there when she walked in. But when the bride kept asking, why are you here? Why are you here? That was really me asking that same question. And I was pretty committed to making this like a fun novel. So I was like, she's here to meet an ex-lover, or maybe she's an assassin. Like maybe this is a totally random thing that I'm writing that's so far outside my style. Maybe this is a thriller. But I ended up writing, I'm here to kill myself. And I knew that was the story as soon as I wrote it and wrote the bride's response, which is essentially, no, this is my wedding week. You are not doing that. And then I was like, oh, that's the story. That's the novel. Phoebe, the embodiment of a kind of despair, and Lila, the bride, who's the embodiment of like demands for perfect happiness, and but I couldn't write it. I was like, that's not the book I was cement. Like put it away for a couple of years. And then I did return to it when I reread some work, and I was like, oh, I'm really interested in this story. Like, what's going to happen here? So I just picked it back up. The biggest thing that I took from that experience was just being the stranger at the wedding over and over and over again. I would work at a photo booth, or it was a photo booth rental company, and they would send me along with the photo booth because it was a long time ago and people weren't regularly doing this, renting photo booths at weddings. So they were a little confused by it. And so I would just stand there and I would be dressed for the event. There were no like official uniforms. So I looked like a wedding guest, but just like sad and standing next to this photo booth the entire night. So some people would come up to me thinking, ask me if I want to drink, or like, if, do I want to dance, or just assuming I was there for the same reason. And then when I would tell them, oh, I can't drink, I'm like actually working. They often then would be so relieved that I was not a part of the wedding and that they could chit chat with me about their dad or the bride or like it was just gossip central time because I didn't matter. I was the safe place, and they had been around wedding people for days. And so that was the perspective I knew that I wanted for this book. I wanted that stranger's perspective. And the stranger who could just like look at it all objectively in some ways, almost like just a witness, and see things that the guests can't really see. And yet, as she continues to get like increasingly entangled in the wedding, right, and forms relationships with these people, is this sort of safe space where they can talk freely, especially the bride. I mean, that becomes the basis of their friendship, at least at first. The bride just dumping on her and telling her everything she doesn't like about her groom, all the things she can't say at the rehearsal dinner, or, Phoebe gets to hear. And I just thought that would be really fun for a reader to listen in through Phoebe's eyes and ears. But yeah, the other thing I would notice is I wouldn't have to know, I would go to these weddings over and over again, and I didn't know anyone, didn't care about anyone there. I always cried during the speeches, like I just realized like the wedding is a formula that works. And you don't even really need to know the people. It's just touching sometimes. If a maid of honor speech is done well, like it's gonna land even with someone who's not invested. And that was something that I really loved about this kind of story too.
When you were touching on the perspective, like of her point of view, how visual in your mind does this all get when she's talking to these people? I mean, are you calling on memories of your own and then
Mm,
substituting what they, if you have experience somewhere in a setting, it's easier to probably.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a combination of experiences as a worker at weddings and then also just as a guest at weddings. And a guest at various hotels, so I think I was drawing from all of those. And I think I am a pretty visual writer. Or like I think I have to be able to see the space and have some connection to the space before I can really like imagine the people in it, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I think there are just so many little memories sort of lodged in my head that were maybe like the beginnings of an inspiration for a scene. I mean, in terms of the funny things that people did at weddings when I worked, like I remember one this I remember this man and woman coming out of the photo booth. It was pretty late in the evening, so everyone was pretty reliably drunk at this point, and they came out of the wedding booth or the photo booth, and they were like, can we delete some of these photos? Like, how do we delete them? And this was, 2009, so it was being put on a DVD. I had, and I wasn't like not gonna delete these photos. Like, I'm the bride's customer. I'm not touching this thing. So I'm like, I'm sorry, there's just no way. And they were panicked. They're like, you have to delete these. I was like, it's fine. I'm sure like people do all kinds of crazy things in there. They're like, yes, but we're not married to each other. Uh, and I was like, well, you fools, what? But that was exactly the kind of moment where, you know, only the stranger would get to hear that. And only the stranger gets to actually really know what's going on with like the person everyone presents themselves as being at a wedding versus like what they're really doing and thinking.